Very good evening. Online students, am I audible? Okay. So last class we were discussing about rituals and we saw the functions of rituals. Now we'll see the other aspect, that is types of rituals. So rituals mainly are of two types. One is rite of passage and the second is rite of intensification. Okay. Although they are divided broadly into two categories, but in a lot of cases you will find that there is a lot of overlap between them. Means it becomes very difficult to distinguish whether it's a rite of passage or it's a rite of intensification. We'll understand this. What is rite of passage? We have already seen when we discussed Victor Turner. These are those rituals that marks the change of status of an individual in a society. Okay. So the idea of this rite of passage was first given by a scholar, Arnold van Gennep. He was the one who actually inspired Turner. Actually, Turner took this idea from Gennep and he gave the idea of liminality and communitas, if you remember. So here, these rite of passages, he says they are mainly of four types: marriage, initiation, naming, and funeral. So marking the change of the status of the individual, like marriage from bachelor to a married man, or initiation means getting inducted into some kind of groups. Okay, so that marks the change of the status. For example, there are societies in which a particular youth might be inducted into the warrior group. Okay, so that is what is called as initiation, getting a formal recognition that he is a warrior now. Okay, that is initiation. Then naming basically recognizes the social birth of that individual. Say certain societies, they say after the name only that the child is supposed to be born. Okay, or say हमारी society में, if you talk about certain sanskars in Hindu life, so one particular sanskar is that is called as namkaran. Okay, so in which that particular individual is born, and one particular sanskar is that upnayan is there. Upnayan means that the sacred thread or Janeyu will be actually worn by the Hindu individual. Okay, now in that these two features, they mark the social birth of that individual. So one is the biological birth and the second one is the social birth of the individual, and that's why all those castes that practice this Upnayan ceremony, they are called as Dvijas. Dvij means twice born people. Okay, so that is, one is the biological birth and one that is the social birth. Then the funeral, that we all know, that marks the transition from a living to a dead. So here Gennep suggested that there are three stages that will be there in rite of passage. We all know it. One is the stage of separation, in which the individual is largely taken away from the society. Or simply speaking, the previous identity is lost. Second is the stage of transition, or this is the stage of transformation. क्या हो गया? किसका क्या रहेगा? It's a stage of transformation in which basically the individual is being prepared for the next role that he or she is supposed to perform in the society. So that is the stage of training for the next role, in which the previous role is lost and the new role is not yet given, or new status is not yet given. That is the stage of transition. Here, what Turner did, he says that when a group of individuals experience rite of passage together, they experience liminality, and due to this shared experience they develop a sense of communitas, right? So these are the two things, and then finally when the transition happens, the individual will be reintegrated into the society, but with new status. Now with this understanding, if you remember, we discussed Mary Douglas, the idea of purity and danger. Do you remember that? Those individuals which are also those things that have the possibility to transcend categories, they will be considered to be powerful, they will be considered to be dangerous in the society. So anybody is alive, anybody is dead, it's okay. But something that is both alive and dead, or there is a doubt between whether it's alive or dead, we don't actually, that is considered to be dangerous, okay? Or somebody is a male, somebody is a female, that is okay. But both male and female, transcending from male to female, then that is considered to be dangerous or powerful. Now due to which that say the society considers that the life of the individual is just like different rooms in a corridor. This is what Mary Douglas is saying. Now these are different statuses that the individual will occupy as he or she progresses in life. Okay, so these status you can understand as rooms on the corridor. You need to be in these rooms, but this passage is very much dangerous in nature. You cannot be in the passage, you have to be in a specific room. That means this room represents childhood, this room represents adolescence, this room represents adulthood. Okay, you can be either a child, you can be a adolescent, you can be a adult, but you can't be in the passage. That means ऐसा नहीं कि जब child बनना है तो in the passage you can move to that room and then to adolescent and then to adulthood. So this is what Mary Douglas is saying, that this is like transcending the categories. So when a particular person moves from one status to another, it's like transcending in the category, and that is considered to be dangerous. And that's why every society will have the rite of passage, in order to make this process of transcending the category smooth and less dangerous in nature. Because when you move from one category to other, you become powerful, you are dangerous, and that transition should be smooth, that transition should be relatively harmless in the nature. And that's why every society, in all such stages of life, when a particular individual transcends from one category to other, will have rite of passage. This is what Mary Douglas talks about. Getting this point? Now let's see some of the examples of this rite of passage in simple societies. So this is a study that was done by A.P. Elkins among aborigines of Australia. Here what actually happens, at certain times, whenever the elder of that society decide, there will be a rite of passage that will be done for adolescent boys. Okay, so maybe after every 3 years or 4 years, boys of a particular age group, maybe 12 to 16 or 12 to 15, will be clubbed together, and they will be taken away from the village. Now when they are taken away from the village, basically this is when the women's they start crying, as if symbolically representing that the children have died. They cry as if like this. Okay, so they cry. That symbolically marks the death of the children. Okay. Moreover, the adults they actually sing some kind of songs. They actually dance, play some musical instruments that eventually are very much resembling the funeral activities of that particular society. Okay, so that is, you can understand the practice of separation. Now, as they are taken to a particular kind of camp which is isolated from the village, larger village say this is isolated, and in this camp, as soon as they enter, they experience two things. One is a teeth, specifically a molar teeth, is knocked off. Okay, एक दांत तोड़ दिया जाएगा. They have to break it by themselves actually. Okay, one. And second, they experience what is called as circumcision. So circumcision simply means cutting the upper tip of the male sexual organ, penis. That is usually done. This is a religious practice in several Abrahamic religions also. Okay, that is circumcision. Okay, so these are the two things that they will experience, and this is when it is formally decided or formally shown that this marks the death of that individual. Previous identity is killed. Okay, so knocking off the teeth and circumcision. Now in this particular camp, they will be given training by the adults about what has to be done. Okay, or what laws or what norms they need to follow when they become adults, when they become elders. Okay, so what is the training, say what are the defense mechanisms that they should follow, what is the duty that they should follow. That is a kind of training that will be done. Moreover, there is a belief that the adult male should be courageous and powerful. And how will they develop that courage and power? Basically by ability to bear pain. And how do they develop that capacity to bear pain? Knocking the teeth by themselves or experiencing the pain of circumcision. They are basically prepared for the next status that they are supposed to perform in the society when they reintegrate. And once this training is over, they will be brought back to the village, reintegrated into the village, and the villagers celebrate as if new births have happened. So parents or the mothers will dance with happiness, and they react as if some new child has been born, somebody new has come out. Okay, so this is the rite of passage of tribes of Australia. Similarly, you will find that there are multiple rites of passage of females as well. Remember Ndembu girls, puberty rituals. Similarly, एक और केस है, Mende girls. So these are tribes of Africa, and this was studied by a scholar, Kenneth Little. Now, what did he observed, or so she observed in this Mende? Actually, girls of certain particular age who have experienced menstruation will collectively taken away from the village. Okay, and then they basically are taken to a camp where they have to shed off their clothes, and the body will be covered with white clay. So they will smear their body completely with white clay, no clothes, and shedding of this cloth basically marks the end of their childhood. Now in some cases, unless and until government prohibited it, but abhi bhi aisa hota hai, they actually experience clitoridectomy. So it's like cutting off the clitoris. So in the female sexual organ, so there is a kind of projection, say muscular projection, that is called as clitoris. Okay. Now, in such kind of societies, this clitoris is considered to be a female version of penis, and that's why it is cut off. It is believed that this clitoris might bring aggression in the females, which is a masculine feature, and that's why in order to ensure that there is no aggression in the female, they experience clitoridectomy. Now, this kind of practices in layman words is also called as female genital mutilation, FGM. Okay, so they experience this clitoridectomy, and then they will be trained by the elder women of that society about the role that they have to perform when they get reintegrated in the society. And that is mainly with respect to the role of motherhood that they will be trained. And finally, they will be reintegrated into the society with new status. Now, modern examples, you will be getting selected into UPSC exam, you will be taken away from the society into labasana. Okay, that is killing off the previous identity. And here you are neither an aspirant nor you are a officer. You will be trained based on the what is code of conduct of the officers, what is expected out of you. Okay, and then you will be reintegrated into society with a new status, that is an IAS officer or whatever service that you get. So basically reintegrated into society based on that particular status. Okay, so this is the rite of passage and modern examples of it, or say any kind of institution, say military training academies. You go into that particular academy as a cadet and eventually graduate out of it as a officer. Okay, so that is the rite of passage that is going through. Or say college mein aap ja rahe ho, so you went there as a civilian and then maybe you came out as an engineer. Okay, so that is the rite of passages that we go through across multiple institutions. Separated from the society, started living in the hostel, started going to the college, largely separated from the society, and then experiencing a kind of transition and eventually getting reintegrated into society with a new status. Okay, so these are rites of passage. Next comes the rites of intensification. So these are those rituals that a society performs during the time of crisis. Any kind of ritual performed usually during the time of crisis will be rite of intensification. Okay, now what does it do? Why do they perform these kind of rituals? Basically, it tries to bind individual to norms of the society and prevents disruption or promotes collective efforts. So whenever the society experiences a crisis, collective crisis, maybe drought, flood, famine, anything like this, crop failure, pest attacks, or epidemics, pandemics, in such cases, if individual gets scared, they might act in a very as per their whims and fancies, and that might disrupt the society altogether. The problem or the crisis might get multiplied, and that's why in order to prevent this crisis to be multiplied, or in order to ensure that the society is able to handle that crisis in an effective manner, there are certain rites of intensification that is performed. Individuals collectively come together, do some kind of rituals through which they are reminded about the norms of the society, their obligation towards the society, and that is how the social disruption is minimized in that society. So that is the rites of intensification. Now, the crisis might not be overt. That means that it's not necessary that you can directly see a crisis. Or har baar, kai baar, this becomes like a practice that you do on certain occasions, day by, or say most of the times, because you find that there can be a crisis that can come. So for example, seasonal change happens. when the change of the season happens. So उस case में there is some kind of in the agricultural economy there can be some kind of disruptions that can come because of the crop failure, because of some kind of unexpected seasonal events that might happen. अभी harvest का time है, and in that case there might be an unexpected rain, there might be an unexpected hailstorm that can actually lead to the failure of the crops. You don't know whether it will happen or not because it is unexpected. But since there is a chance, society usually go for these kind of rites or rituals during the time of unexpected crisis or covert crisis as well. And this later on becomes a part of routine life, that every seasonal change they will perform some kind of rituals. And now that's why you will see that there are certain festivals that is associated with agricultural economy as the season change. So spring festivals all across India, Holi, Chap Charkut, Bihu, Gudi Padwa, okay, so Baisakhi. So these are the festivals that actually are the rituals or rites of intensification during the time of seasonal changes, okay. Or if you see the modern example, I gave you that case of ISRO. Okay, when they were supposed to launch a spacecraft, the chances is that it might fail. Okay, एक failure already हो चुका था, Chandrayaan, and that's why they were very much cautious whether that failure should not happen, and that's why they performed a rite of intensification in order to say overcome that anxiety due to that crisis. Now I told you that sometimes rite of passage and intensification might seem to be overlapping. For example, let's say the ritual related to funeral. Now it's a rite of passage for the individual who has died, but at the same time it's a rite of intensification for the individuals who are alive, the family members. It's a crisis moment for them. Somebody very important is now gone, and that's why they are in a state of crisis. Some very important person is lost. How the family will be managed, how the affairs of the family will be managed. If that particular person is the breadwinner, who will take care of the expenses of the family? That's a kind of crisis. And in such kind of crisis, the family members or the social say the connections, they will come together, participate collectively in that rite of intensification, and that is how the individuals who are experiencing this crisis develop a sense of relief. Okay, that we have some social connections, people will take care of us, or the needs will be taken care of, and that is how the crisis is averted. Okay, so it's a rite of passage for the individual who has died, but a rite of intensification for the people who are collectively performing the last rites of that individual. Okay, so overlap kar raha hai. Okay, or say let's take the case of marriage. Marriage is a rite of passage for the individual who are getting married. Okay, husband and wife. But the family members, the participants, for them it's a rite of intensification. Why? Because it's a crisis moment. Crisis in the sense that a new member is coming into our society, a new member is coming into our family, whether she will be able to adjust or not, whether that transition will be harmonious or not, whether the family will remain united or not, whether the son will remain obedient to us or not. Okay, so in every case there is some kind of question that they have, and that's why it's more like a rite of intensification. At the same time, it's a rite of passage for the couples. Okay, that transition from bachelorhood to a married man. So this is the rite of intensification. Now, the other aspect related to ritual and myth is relation between rituals and myth. I don't think I need to dictate that rite of passage and intensification. So relation between rituals and myth. So there are three major perspectives that actually explain how rituals and myth are related to each other. So first one is primacy of myth, or which says that ritual originated from myth. Myth created, or myth is something that is the source and ritual is something that is created out of it. E.B. Tyler, he supports this argument, and he in turn says that relationship between myth and ritual is same as that is science, that is between science and technology. So science is a theory of knowledge, some kind of sense, a collection of knowledge, okay, some kind of knowledge, that is science, and technology is application of science, that becomes technology. In the same way, myth is a kind of knowledge that the culture has, and ritual is application of that knowledge. So Tyler is saying as technology is nothing but application of science, ritual is nothing but application of myth or mythology. So he says that myth rituals, they're enactments of myth. Enactments means we try to create the similar scenes, we try to create the similar, or we try to recreate that time in which that myth used to happen, in which that particular story used to happen, to bring the people back into that time. So for example, there is a myth called as Ramayan, and then there is a ritual that is Ram Leela that is happening. Okay, now you are recreating that time in which Ramayan happened, or in which Sita ji was abducted, and then there was a fight between Ram and Ravan. Okay, just to bring the people to that particular time in which this was actually happening. Okay, so this is what he's trying to say, that it is to bring back the people into that time in which this kind of events used to happen. So it's an enactment of that myth. Or Dashera, so in which we basically burn the effigy of Ravan. It's a ritual based on a particular myth. So it's an enactment of that myth. So ritual is coming out of that myth. That is the idea of primacy of myth. This is given by E.B. Tyler. Okay. The other one is just opposite of this. That is primacy of rituals. So primacy of ritual says that it's just opposite. That not the myth is the source of ritual, but the other way around, that ritual is the source of myth. So a scholar named William Robertson Smith, he gave this idea, saying that there is ritual that is prime or the supreme idea. He says that in the primitive religion, ritual was supreme, or say people used to command the nature, people used to control the nature, it is through rituals only. And they wanted this ritual to be conserved, they wanted this ritual to be preserved, and that's why they created myths so that this ritual can be maintained or preserved. So मतलब ritual को बचाने के लिए, ritual को save करने के लिए, they created some kind of story. If you relate it to Geetsian definition, creating a general conception of order of existence and clothing that conception through an aura of factuality. So there was rituals, and in order to preserve or transmit that rituals or transmit that knowledge from one generation to another, they created stories so that it can be saved. Okay, Similarly, the similar kind of idea was given by scholar Fraser. Remember Fraser? So he wrote a book, The Golden Bough, in which he gave the evolution of human psyche from magic to religion to science. So he says that initially people used to practice magic or believe in magic, and these magical practice transformed to what is called as ritual. These magic practices were the ones which actually got transformed into rituals, and it's the ritual that eventually led to the birth of religion, which was supported by myth. So magic eventually, or magical practices, that eventually took the shape of rituals, and it's when magic transformed into religion, mythologies were created, stories were created, and they were based on the existing ritual practices only. So it's the ritual that is primary, and it's from the ritual that myths have been created or myths have originated. Are you getting this? So these are the two major scholars who are saying that primacy of ritual is there. Ritual से सारे mythologies create हुए हैं. The last one, myths and rituals are non-coextensive. So this idea was given by Malinowski, who says that it is not necessary that for every ritual there will be a myth, or vice versa, that for every myth there will be a ritual. There are some myths that might be supported by ritual or vice versa, but there might be certain rituals or myth that might not have a counterpart available. So it's not necessary that for every ritual there will be a myth or vice versa. However, presence of one actually gives stability to the other. So for example, if a myth has some kind of ritual support, you will definitely find that that particular myth is remembered more. That particular myth is getting more justification. But if a myth exists without ritual, it is usually forgotten. Or the other way around, that there is a ritual without any kind of mythological support. There are some activities that you do, but uski koi story nahi hai. Nobody actually knows the narrative behind it. In that case, that ritual will be forgotten, that ritual will be faded away. So here he stops commenting upon which came first, but he says that it's not necessary that every myth will have a ritual or vice versa. But if a myth has a ritual support, or if a ritual has the support from a myth, definitely it will stay longer in the memory of the people, and or else it will fade away. So they both support each other. That is what he is trying to say, rather than saying which came first or which came later. Okay, so this is the basic idea. This is the relationship between myth and ritual as per Malinowski. Presence of one will strengthen other. Cutting nails during night is a myth without ritual. No, don't confuse myth with superstition. Okay, this is a superstitious belief rather than a myth. Myth is a grand narrative, okay, a larger story with characters and all such kind of things. Superstitious belief system cannot be equated with myth. Okay, so this is the relationship between myth and ritual. Next topic that we'll see is religious specialist in simple societies. So broadly, there are two categories of religious specialists. One, who are respected, and the other, who are basically feared. So in case of the ones who are respected, there are two specialists: shamans or the priest. And the one who are feared basically are two: the sorcerers and witches. Although these ideas, as I discussed, might seem to be very much outdated, but I'll tell you a lot of contemporary examples of this that will show that although we don't talk about these practices, but they somehow have become a part of our behavior. The words that we use, the behavior that we show with respect to each other, they basically reflect our belief system in these kind of religious practices like sorcery, witchcraft, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's see each of these religious practitioners. The first one, shaman. So shaman usually a part-time male specialist who is mainly found in hunting gathering societies. And this particular shaman, what he does, he basically tries to communicate with spirits in other world. He might use certain kind of techniques like trance, dreams, some kind of visions in order to communicate with that spirit. Okay, and every shaman usually have what is called as a guardian spirit. Guardian spirit, as if that particular spirit is kind of personal, and that particular spirit will be acting as a messenger between these two worlds. Okay, the shaman basically in this world, and that spirit will communicate with the other spirits in the other world and bring back the message to the shaman. Okay, and the shaman will be establishing that communication. Now he will enter into a state of trance. Now usually these shamans, they get the training from the elder shamans. Okay, and in that training they will be given some kind of techniques what to be used, and many a times these shamans will be using techniques like use of psychotropic drugs, charas, ganja, afim, so that they can actually enter into that state of trance in order to communicate, or in order to actually develop that kind of vision which actually helps them communicate with that spirit. Okay, or they might actually go for intense fasting, they might actually go for intense dancing, some kind of things that actually helps them establish a link with that particular spirit or that particular world. Okay, now what does this spirit actually do? What do the jobs they do? Mainly, basically they will try to contact the spirit in order to find the cause of a problem. So somebody has come to them maybe for a kind of problem that they are facing, so they will be communicating with the spirit to find the cause of that problem, and then based on the cause they will do some kind of magic to heal that particular person or that particular group. Okay, so that's how they are acting as a healer for the society. Now if we see, the first person to discuss about this shamanism was a scholar, evolutionist scholar, Adolf Bastian. What he discovered was that this shamanistic practice was very common across all the hunting gathering societies, be it in the Arctic region, polar region, or be it in the tropical region. He found that hunting gathering societies across the world, they have shamanism as a belief system, based on which he claimed the idea that since all the hunting gatherers, they have this shamanism, that means they think alike. And he was the one who coined the term psychic unity of mankind. And it's the first person to talk about this idea of psychic unity of mankind based on commonality of shamanism found across all the hunting gathering societies across the world, be it in the polar region or in the tropical region, based on which he says that people think alike. Okay, and that's the psychic unity of mankind coming from the study of shamanism. Next, a scholar, I am Louis, and Marcia Eliade, they basically discussed how shamanism actually works in the society. So we all know that this is scientifically not correct, communicating with the spirits. But why do people go? Or how do they actually believe in shamans? So they talk about a phenomena called as shamanic complex. That means the belief in shamanism in any society depends upon three major factors, which is collectively called as shamanic complex. And what are the three factors? Belief of shaman in himself. So how much shaman believes in his power, how much the faith he has in his power, that is the first factor. Second is belief of patient in the power of shaman, how much patients believe in the power of shaman. And the third, that is belief of community in the power of shaman. So if these three belief systems, they are very much inclined towards the shaman, that community believes, patient believes, and the shaman himself believes that he is powerful, he has that power, eventually it creates a kind of effect in the mind of the patient that this particular person has the power to heal, and the person gets healed in most of the cases, which is very commonly called in the present term called as placebo effect. So placebo is something that we use to test some kind of drugs. So when a new drug is actually created, in order to check the efficacy of that drug, what the people do, they actually divide the community people into two groups. One who will be given the actual drug, and the other group will be given some sweet pills. But none of them knows who is getting the actual drug. Both of them will be told that this is the particular drug and this has the therapeutic effect and it can cure your problem. Now if in both the groups we see the similar level of efficacy, that means जिसको sweet pills भी दिए और जिसको drug भी दिया, दोनों में आपको same level of treatment दिख रहा है, तो that means that drug is not doing anything, it's mainly the placebo that has worked. Okay, and that is to check the efficacy in the trial of drugs, right? Same thing is actually happening. Many people are getting cured because they have a belief that they have been given the correct drug, or the shaman, they have the power to solve that problem, and that's why the body is healing themselves. A kind of restoration mechanism actually has started to work. So if your belief is very strong, so then even a problem that might be very much intense, that might be not solvable by some kind of medicine, might get healed. And that's why आप देखोगे कि कई सारे जो naturopathy mechanisms हैं, they basically talk about mindsets. Okay, thinking that if you think that the problems will actually get solved, it might actually manifest in that manner. Or you might talk about certain kinds of manifestation techniques that we discuss कि आप जैसा सोचते हो ब्रह्म मुहूर्त में एक्चुअली वो होने लग जाता है, इट बिकम्स अ रियलिटी. सो 5 a.m. club is that there is a book 5 a.m. club that also talks about it कि ब्रह्म मुहूर्त में whatever you think that becomes a reality. It's all about the placebos that they are talking about. Reality does not happen. So when these three things are strong, in that case it might happen that shamanistic technique might work for that individual. Or suppose if it fails, what will happen? The shaman will be changed. You don't reject shamanism. Just like when you go to a doctor, okay, and you actually ask some kind of medicine from him. So what happens? He gives you a medicine, and but that medicine has not worked for you. So what do? Do you reject the entire medical system? No. You basically change the doctor. In the same way, the belief system is there, and you went to a doctor, but that particular doctor is not able to cure you. You change the doctor, you change the shaman, you move from one to other. There's a very interesting story of a shaman named as Quesalid. This particular person was from a community called as Kwakiut. Remember, it was studied by Franz Boas only. So this Quesalid, he got educated, and he had a feeling that this shamanism is a kind of scam, and I want to expose it. He knew that there is nothing called magical power, there is nothing called spirits and guardian spirit and nothing like that. So he wanted to expose it. So what he decided, I will become a member myself, I will learn shamanism and then expose it. So what he did, he got a formal training for shamanism from the elder shamans of his community. And he learned all the techniques. He actually learned the techniques like putting blood in his mouth. And blood in his mouth, when somebody comes, he will actually act as if he is sucking in the poison and throw that blood, showing that person that, okay, yes, that evil part from the body is sucked out and that blood has come out of his mouth. So all these kind of techniques he has actually learned. Once he learned it, he started to practice. People started to come to him. And what happened, that people, they had a strong belief that this Kosalid, he is educated, yet he is a shaman. So people had the belief in that person's capacity. And to his surprise, whatever he did, people got cured easily. Uske heal hone lage. Okay, and his rate was very high, means that customers were very much satisfied. So then he decided how to expose. People have started believing more in shamanism. So then he decided, okay, I'll participate in a competition in which multiple shamans participate. Okay, just to expose them all. So he participated in that competition, and to his surprise, he won that game. And to an extent that whatever he did, he succeeded so much that he himself started believing in shamanism, thinking that he himself has power, and it is based on this power that he is able to heal the people. Okay, so later on he became a full-time shaman. बढ़िया business चलने लगा इसका. And this is what Franz Boas actually reported in his study. एक इसके ऊपर इसी टाइप की एक मूवी है, हिंदी मूवी, अमिताभ बच्चन की, जादूगर करके. So it's basically he went to a particular say Amrish Puri was the jadugar, and eventually he wanted to expose it. So he went to his court, and he started doing all such kind of tricks, and eventually in that effort to expose him, people started believing that he himself is Mahant or something like that. That movie is there. It's a very old movie. So this is the case of shamanic complex, and this is how placebo effect actually works, makes people believe that this shamanism is actually correct. Okay, last caller for shamanism, Victor Turner. So Turner actually compares shamanism, or this practice of shamanism, to social drama. Remember social drama? Social drama is a recurrent conflict that will happen in the society. So, and in that recurrent conflict, society will come up with some kind of solution in order to ensure that the society does not break down. So these social drama has 4 stages, remember: breach, crisis, redressal, and reintegration. Now let's say the case of breach. Here in this case, the person falls ill. That's the breach. The person is ill, the society is suffering from some kind of a problem. That is the first stage. Second is the stage of crisis. In the case of crisis, the illness gets extended. The problem becomes very much severe. Maybe some death might happen, maybe some economic loss might happen, something severe might happen, that is the extension of that particular breach. Then comes the redressal mechanism in which the shamans will enter. What they will identify? They will identify if there is any violation of a taboo. Anything that is forbidden is violated. किसी ने कुछ ऐसा किया है जो शायद नहीं होना चाहिए. Identifying the cause is the first thing. Violation of any kind of taboo. And based on the identification of the cause, they will give some kind of redressal mechanisms, or say redressal tips that will be given by them. And based on that tips that the society actually follows, the individual either heals, or if not heal, he might die out. But eventually this belief in that shamanism remains intact, or the belief in the social values remains intact. So these are the 4 stages: breach, crisis, redressal and reintegration. So he is comparing this entire process of shamanism, reflecting the social drama in a society wherein there is a violation of taboo, and due to which certain crisis might come up, and shamanism will be practiced in order to heal the society because of a conflict that might have come because of violation of a taboo. Okay, so this is Victor Turner talking about shamanism. Okay, just write this. The shaman is part-time ritual specialist, comma, usually male, comma, who is a healer, and a spiritual mediator, He entertains a close relationship with larger spiritual universe, comma, giving him the power to heal, Next point, shamanism is usually found in hunting gathering societies, who are nomadic or semi-nomadic, The shamans obtain training from elder shamans. They have a guardian spirit. With whom they communicate through visions or trances. Next point. They may use psychotropic drugs to attain psychotropic drugs to attain altered state of consciousness to attain altered state of consciousness. Next point, right? Anthropological understanding. Yeah, insights. Adolphe Bastien found evidence of shamanism in hunting gathering societies across the world. He believed that this is due to identical thinking capacity of humans. Identical thinking capacity of humans, or psychic unity of mankind. Next, I am Louis and Marcia Eliade. Gave the idea of shamanic complex to explain how shamanism works in a society. The shamanic complex displays relation between shaman, patient, and community. It consists of three variables. The first one, belief of shaman in himself and his power. Second, belief of patient on power of shaman. And last, belief of community on power of shaman. Next point, they argued that healing depends upon shared beliefs, cultural meanings, and experiences. Shared belief, cultural meanings, and experiences. Next point, Turner argued that shamanism is a reflection of social drama in a society. Is a reflection of social drama in a society. You can just refer this chart, that is breach, crisis, redressal and reintegration. Okay. Just refer to this and write next point. It reflects that shamanism reflects that truth in healing can be cultural. Truth in healing can be cultural, not just biological. Not just biological. Now, how does this belief system or understanding this belief system can help us or help anthropologists, or say you being a district magistrate, how can it help you? So there is a particular case study with respect to this, a case of Swaziland in Africa. Now here in this particular place, Swaziland, if you see the demography of this place, there is one shaman with respect to every 110 people. And for every one medical professional, there are 10,000 people. So this is the ratio of medical personnels there. So for every one medical personnel, there are 10,000 people. For every one shaman, there are 110 people only. Now here in this society, it's a very poor country, and that's why people, children, they were dying rampantly due to waterborne disease. And none of the agency, international agency, any agency, they were not able to do any kind of solution. Reason being, first, medical personnel were very much less. They were not able to address the issue at the ground level. And second, they were not able to address because the belief in shamanism was very strong. So people, they used to rush to the shaman first, and they will prefer the treatment that is given by the shamans. And if जब तक वो मतलब realize करेंगे that this is not working, it will be too late, okay, and eventually the child will die. So that was the case that was there, and you can understand it from the demography. Now how to solve it? So international agencies, they started consulting certain anthropologists, thinking that it's more like a cultural problem rather than a biological problem per se. So what happened? There is an anthropologist named E.C. Green. He came on board. What he did, he called all the shamans for a meeting in Swaziland and explained them the issue. This is the issue. You are present in larger numbers, and eventually people will be consulting you first, and they have a greater faith in you. So we have an advice to you that instead of giving your medicine in the desi packaging, you should be giving ORS in your indigenous packing. Don't give ORS in say formal factory packings, but rather give that powder in that desi packing that you are giving to the people. Okay, so shamans, they understood the problem, they accepted this, and eventually when the people, they were going to the shaman, they were not given the shamanic medicine, but rather they were given ORS in that shamanic packaging. And that is how a big problem was reverted, by bringing the traditional healers into the fold of modern medicine. Okay, a large outreach was created, and moreover the belief system was also maintained at the same time. अब मान लो कि problem ये थी कि belief system shamanism में ज़्यादा था. Even if the international agency tries to give some kind of medicine, people don't accept it because they have a higher belief in shamans. Okay, so that's how, by maintaining the belief system, at the same time bringing the shamans into the modern medicine realm, they were able to solve that particular problem. Now this is a kind of solutions that you will have to create while you are on the ground level. A lot of solutions to the problem that you will be creating will not be culturally acceptable to the people, and that might get rejected. You will feel that these people are very much orthodox, very much conservative, and they don't accept the idea of progress. But the only thing is, the way you are trying to give them the idea of progress is not culturally acceptable to them. And that's why whenever you want to communicate with the people, whenever you want anything to be accepted by the people, that idea should be culturally sensitive in nature or culturally acceptable in nature. Only then that idea will be accepted. Else it will be altogether rejected. आपको लगेगा कि ये लोग अनपढ़ हैं इसलिए नहीं कर रहे. No. Any kind of idea which is not culturally acceptable will be rejected, no matter उनका कितना भी benefits हो रहा हो. Okay. So this is something that you have to learn from this example. That is the case of Swaziland. Okay. Next one is a priest. Somebody is saying that won't this discourage rationality? If I have to answer from anthropological point of view, rationality is subjective in nature. What is rational for you might be irrational for some others. So there is no single definition of rationality. आपके लिए science rational है. Some other people might have a different view with respect to rationality. You have to address that thing with respect to their rationality. अब आप hierarchy of rationality करने लग जाओगे कि my rationality is superior to your rationality, then as a district magistrate you will fail there. Okay, आप बोल के कि नहीं आपको ये solution accept भी करना है with the understanding that your rationality is inferior to mine. So in such case जब तक आप ये करने की कोशिश करोगे things will be आपका transfer हो जाएगा, कुछ भी नहीं हो पाएगा वहां. Okay, so you have to create some culturally acceptable solutions. Only that is the way, and accept that every society has a different outlook towards the, say, some kind of external phenomena. And if you don't align your solution with respect to that outlook, acceptance is very rare और बहुत ज़्यादा chances नहीं है. अब आप सोचो कि ये जो farm bills थे, they were very much profitable, so they were very much good for the farmers. But eventually what happened? That despite having so many good provisions that could have benefited the farmers, a group of farmers, they protested. Now, who is right, who is wrong? We are not here to discuss that. The only thing that you can understand anthropologically is that these farm bills were projected in a manner that was not culturally acceptable to them. And due to lack of cultural acceptability, these farm bills were rejected. अगर उसको इस तरीके से प्रोजेक्ट किया जाता कि जो culturally acceptable था, तो maybe शायद you can understand this. And one other case of green revolution आप जैसे कहोगे, या कई सारे agricultural reforms आज के टाइम पे हम क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे? So इंडिया की सबसे बड़ी एग्रीकल्चर प्रॉब्लम क्या है? मोनोक्रॉपिंग. That is, the same crop will be grown in the field and that leads to exhaustion of the nutrients in the field. But nobody is, despite knowing that this particular crop is giving no yield, or say despite knowing that ki Punjab mein there is water crisis and growing water intensive crops like rice and say wheat is not suitable for them, still they are doing that. They are knowing that there is water crisis, groundwater levels have declined significantly. The thing is, cultural problems are there. So they have been doing this rice and wheat cultivation for generations. They have cultural relativity to it, or say cultural, say kind of sync with respect to it. And if somebody comes saying that I am from PUSA, that is Agricultural Institute, and आपको monocrop की जगह multiple crops करने चाहिए या फिर ऐसा करना चाहिए, they don't listen to him because they believe that this particular guy is telling us that we are irrational, and that's why they will not accept this kind of idea. So any person who is from their community explains them in a manner that they consider to be culturally acceptable, only then there can be a social change that can happen. Else anybody trying to bring a social change from top to bottom, not possible. Okay, so this is the case with respect to rationality. Let's discuss the next one, that is priest. So priest, unlike the shaman, he is a full-time specialist. And rather than believing in magical practices or rather than believing in, say, spirits and all, here he will be trying to communicate with the God through prayers, offerings, sacrifices, rituals, not magical acts or not through communication with the spirit. Now these priests, they are usually found in sedentary societies. Sedentary means they who are not nomadic, who are actually living at one place, who have agricultural surplus. So then what they will do, they will create a particular person who is identified as a priest, whose expenses will be taken care by the community itself, and who is entrusted with the responsibility of religious affairs. That is how the priest will be created in such kind of societies जहाँ पे agricultural surplus होगा. Now this particular person is formally initiated and ceremonially inducted into the society. Formally initiated means proper training will happen. Only then he will get the tag of a priest. And ceremonially inducted means it's with the acceptance of the people in the society, and by a large ceremony, that the responsibility of the priesthood will be given to a particular person. Now usually it is through some formal training, and in some cases some informal training will be leading to creation of priest. For formal training, for example, in case of Western societies, so a particular person who is appointed as a priest, he has to take a degree in theology, bachelor's of arts in theology. Every college actually offers this BA theology, and internship where do they are posted in certain churches under the priests. So वो वहाँ पे internship करते हैं, and then once the internship is over, so then they will be appointed as a priest in different churches. Okay, but they have a formal degree, and in that formal degree they will be given some kind of training with respect to the religious literature, with respect to the religious practices. For example, they might be trained for exorcism. Exorcism आपने सुना होगा, so किसी से भूत प्रेत भगाना. So that is, you have seen that movie Exorcism of Emily Rose. It's one a very good movie, देखना जरूर. So that is what they will be trained for in this degree of theology. In case of India, there is a cases of formal training. So there are several mutt, they actually give training to the priests, and in certain small temples which are not part of the larger network, there is informal training कि priest का बेटा जो पंडित जी का बेटा है वही, he will be taking up the responsibility of priesthood. So that is informal training where this is hereditary in nature. Okay, now these people, they are keepers of sacred law. Keepers in the sense that they remember the religious doctrines, they remember the religious literature, and actually advise the people based on this religious doctrines and literature. Okay, and through this they maintain a kind of sacred law in the society, that when should the society fast, when should the society should celebrate, which is the auspicious day when Diwali has to be done, or when Dashera has to be done, or say when Eid is supposed to happen. So they will be the ones who will be acting as that authority, who will be keeping up that sacred law in the society. Okay, so these are some of the features related to priests. Not that important figure as per anthropology is concerned, because ये modern society में या फिर well established society में ज़्यादा देखने को मिलता है. Okay, just write this: priest. According to Max Weber, according to Max Weber, priest is a functionary. Priest is a functionary who performs regular, permanent, and organized functions that are related to divine. That are related to divine. He does this through act of worship. Either on behalf of individual either on behalf of individual or for society as a whole. Or for society as a whole. He has a great knowledge. He has a great knowledge of text and doctrines. Great knowledge of text and doctrines. And acts as a keeper of sacred law. And acts as a keeper of sacred law. Next point. According to Anthony Wallace, remember we have discussed that Anthony Wallace, 4 types of religion: shamanic, complex, Olympian, and monotheism. According to Anthony Wallace, priesthood is found in big, complex. Priesthood is found in big, complex, and resourceful societies. They are formally initiated or trained. They are formally initiated and ceremonially inducted. Formally initiated and ceremonially inducted member of a recognized religious organization. They enjoy high ranks and status. Enjoy high rank and status and are maintained by donations of societal members. Next point. They are trained sometimes formally and sometimes informally. They do not claim to have supernatural power. Rather they perform rituals. Which they believe is effective in solving the problem. Now let's see the feared specialists, that is sorcerers and the witches. So sorcerers are nothing but what we call in Hindi, that is tantric. Okay, the magicians. So they are the ones who basically are believed to have some kind of supernatural powers or use magic in order to manipulate the natural phenomena. And this manipulation is usually to benefit oneself. So in general, why they are feared? Because first, they are believed to have some kind of magical powers. And second, by using that magical power, they can manipulate the natural phenomena. And third, they are supposed to act in a selfish manner. That means they can do something to benefit themselves at the cost of others. And that's why there is a sense of fear with respect to them. Now several anthropologists, they wanted to study this sorceries that is present in simple societies. But there was a big problem that was actually seen with respect to this sorcery practice. What was the major problem? The problem that they saw was this is a very covert practice. Nobody does it in public. Nobody knows who actually is a sorcerer. These are all hidden practices. Okay, so few people know about it, and that's why it was very difficult to discuss, or people, since they fear a lot, they usually don't discuss these kind of phenomena in the society as well. Okay, so वो discuss भी करेंगे तो जैसे suppose करो that your parents might have heard some kind of rumor, okay, and they might actually when they were saying that okay this person died, okay, now very silently they'll say that he somebody was telling me that उसने इस पे कोई काला जादू किया था. Okay, so that is a very rarely discussed phenomena, and that is, even if it is discussed, that will be discussed very secretly with very closed people. Nobody discusses that I know somebody who has done black magic or say something like, no, publicly discussion nahi hoga. And that's why anthropologists, they were finding it very difficult to collect information related to it. Now, two anthropologists, they basically tried and succeeded in this. The first one was Evans Pritchard, who studied Azande society of Sudan, and he was able to discover the practice of sorcery, and he was able to conduct a kind of one-to-one session with the sorcerers as well. Okay, next is, you all know his name, Rio Fortune, who wrote a book, Sorcerers of Dobu. Which was actually referred by Ruth Benedict in a study, Patterns of Culture, Zuni, Dobu, Kwakiut, Dionysian genius that is leading to some kind of behavior practice. So he found that the society of Dobu, they are very much suspicious, okay, of each other, because they have a fear that the other person might cast a black magic spell on us, okay, that is to harm other. And that's why I might have told you this case that the females, they never leave their food pot unattended because they have a feeling that somebody might poison it. So he discussed that, or he found this in the case of Dobus. So these were the two major studies that basically talked about the presence of sorceries in simple societies. इसके अलावा बहुत कम ही studies ऐसी हैं that were able to discuss sorceries because it being a very covert phenomena, not very much discussed. Now, if we see in the current context, we find the belief system in sorcery to be intact, and that is seen in certain kind of prohibitions that we have in the present society. For example, I might have given this example of pointing the fingers. So there are laws that actually prohibit the pointing of fingers, and that is mainly because we come from the society in which any sorcerer was supposed to cast a spell by dipping the finger in a particular kind of solution and pointing it to the other to cast a spell on that person. Similarly, in any kind of formal conversation, we are not allowed to use cuss words, like words like something like cursing each other. We are not allowed to use it. Now that actually tells us the society's belief in power of words, because most simple form of sorcery is basically done through words, by cursing somebody, जैसे जिसको हिंदी में श्राप कहा जाता है. So that was a kind of sorcery, and since we believe in the power of words, that's why what we see that these kind of words are not allowed in any kind of formal conversation. So go to hell this is a kind of curse. Okay, and these kind of curse words, they are prohibited to be used. That's again a kind of survival, that we come from a society in which we used to believe in the power of words. और कई सारी हिंदी मूवीज में आप देखते हो कि बड़ा सेंटी सा सीन हो जाता है कि somebody says that कि मैं मर गया तो, and somebody is like, remember that? So that is also a case of belief in the power of words. Okay, and that shows that we come from a society in which these kind of sorcery practices used to exist. That means somebody can cast a spell by speaking about it, and eventually that might become true, and that's these kind of survivals do exist. Now there is a scholar, Walter Cannon. He wanted to check how sorcery actually works. So he did a study in tribes of Australia, just to check कि reason क्या है, कैसे sorcery काम करती है, how it is effective. So what he found that when a particular person actually found that he has been or he is a victim of some kind of black magic or some kind of evil spell has been done on him, so he tested the stress hormones in his body and he found that stress hormones like cortisol or fight or flight hormone like adrenaline, it was very high in the body. Okay, just because that particular person was told that you some kind of evil spell has been done on you, so this, due to which, just because of thinking, the stress hormones increased significantly. He was feeling restless, and adrenaline is like fight or flight hormone, so that you experience in some kind of crisis when you want to run, when you want to save yourself. That's the adrenaline rush. Okay, and that adrenaline rush was also being experienced. That is due to which he was not able to sit peacefully. He was not able to do his job peacefully. Could not focus anywhere, and that is he was experiencing extreme restlessness and anxiety because of these hormones in the body. Now, when he consulted a sorcerer or a shaman who would actually convince that the evil force has been taken out of his body by doing some kind of activity, immediately after that, he tested the blood sample of that tribes and found that these stress hormones have declined significantly. And that is how the person is at peace, believing that the problem has been solved. So he basically concluded that all and everything is in the mind. What one person thinks becomes the reality. Okay, so if a person believes that he is ill, the person believes that some kind of spell has been casted on him, the body starts responding in a mechanism as if it is in some kind of crisis, and that eventually worsens the situation of the body. And that is seen in case of the hormone, say, concentration in his blood sample. And when that person is convinced that okay, this problem is solved, eventually these stress hormones decline significantly and the person feels that he is at peace, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, सब problem solve हो गई. So just to confirm that कि yes, so इसी की वजह से people believe or people's belief in sorcery and all actually increases multifold. Okay, so just write this sorcery. The word sorcery, the word sorcery means the word sorcery means some sort of individual manipulation, some sort of individual manipulation of supernatural forces to harm another person, to harm another person, or to enrich oneself, or to enrich oneself at the expense of other, or to enrich oneself at the expense of other. It generally has negative connotation and is usually feared. It generally has negative connotation and is usually feared in the society. Ivan Spichard studied the practice of sorcery and witchcraft among Azande tribes of Africa. Practice of sorcery and witchcraft among Azande tribes of Africa. Similarly, Rio Fortune described sorcery among Dobus of Melanesia. Among Dobus of Melanesia. Both of them highlighted difficulties. Both of them highlighted difficulties in obtaining first-hand data. Highlighted difficulties in obtaining first-hand data, as sorcery is a covert phenomena. As sorcery is a covert phenomena. Okay, next point. Sorcerers are most likely the one who have legitimately learned the ways to exploit supernatural powers without harm to themselves. It is believed that they can use these powers for anti-social purposes. Okay. Next heading, right? Survivals of sorcery. First one. Survivals of sorcery. First one. Pointing of fingers towards other. Was once believed to cast evil spell on the other or on someone. Evil spell on someone. Therefore, prohibiting it in a modern society is a protective taboo. Prohibiting it in the modern society is a protective taboo. Second point. Cuss words like curses or divine punishments curse words like curses or divine punishment, were once believed to cause harm through verbal magic. Modern laws against these practices reflect our belief, modern laws against these practices reflect our beliefs in power of spoken words. Our belief in power of spoken words. Okay, next point. Walter Cannon, Walter Cannon in his study of Australian Aborigines, Walter Cannon in his study of Australian Aborigines highlighted that sorcery functions through placebo effect. Sorcery functions through placebo effect. He found that an individual who believes he found that an individual who believes that a magical spell has been casted upon him experiences anxiety and restlessness due to overproduction of stress hormones. He may feel relief as a result of being convinced by the sorcerer that the evil has been removed. Now the last one, the most feared of all the religious practitioners, that is witch and witchcrafts. Okay, witchcraft is the act of performing, say, this activities. So what is this witch and how they are different from the sorcerers? So basically, these are those religious practitioners who are supposed to do some kind of harm because of some kind of innate power. Innate power means that is inside them, and these innate power might manifest even without bearer's knowledge. They have this power. They might think that some harm can happen or should happen to somebody. They're not doing any kind of magical activities, but it's basically based on their thought only that some harm happens to someone. Okay, and that's why it's a kind of a power that might manifest without even the bearer's knowledge. कि the one who has this power might not be aware कि मेरे सोचने से किसी का बुरा हो जाएगा, but just because that particular person is thinking something bad is actually happening. Now just you might feel that it's so absurd a feeling, but as I talk about the anthropological interpretation, you will understand that this is so true even right now in our societies also. Okay, so if we say Rio Fortune and Ivan Spichard, they actually wanted to distinguish what is the distinction between sorcerers and the witches. So they found that sorcerers, they are doing magical activities, and for that magical activities they would require some kind of instruments, they would require some kind of objects, they would require some kind of setup, and that's why sorcery is easy to prove. that this particular person is engaged in the act of sorcery, because these setup, these kind of objects, say instruments, they are there, and based on that you can prove that this particular person is involved in that act of sorcery. But witchcraft may, since it is being done on the basis of thought, it's difficult to prove that this particular person is a witch. And usually what actually happens due to this, people accuse a person to be a witch. अब इसमें आपको कोई प्रूफ की जरूरत नहीं है. You can simply label or accuse any person to be a witch. And how that accusation comes? Because you have a feeling that this person wants bad for me. Okay, and that's why you might accuse anyone to be a witch, because that person you feel is thinking bad for you or wants harm to you. Okay, and in such cases, usually any kind of enmity in the society leads to witchcraft acquisition, because you believe that this is my enemy and he or she would never want good for me. He or she would have thought some kind of bad for me, and it is because of his or her thought that these bads or misfortunes are happening in my life. So witches, they are considered to be explanation of every misfortune, because उस case में you don't need to prove that he or she is actually a witch. You can just accuse that person, and that is it. And it depends how many people believe your allegation. If people believe, then that particular person might be labeled as a witch and eventually outcasted from the society, or the society might go for a witch hunt. Getting this idea? So that is just based on the accusation, any particular person can be labeled as a witch in the society. Now, let's see. Yes, please. Here, explanation of every misfortune. Innate power might manifest without bearer's knowledge. I'll dictate this, just don't worry. Next one, the attributes of witches. What kind of characteristics that society gives to the witches? What are the features that the society believes are with witches? So there are certain major attributes that society usually associates with witch. The first one is antisocial behaviors. They have a belief that these witches, they would want disruption in the society, or they would want social subversions, bringing chaos in the society, bringing panics in the society. So antisocial behavior. Second one, nocturnal activities. That is, these witches become active during night times, nocturnal. Third, these attributes are very important. I'll just relate to it in context of modernity, so you'll understand this. So nocturnal activities. The third one is transformation. These witches can transform themselves, okay, into different figures. It can exist in the form of a bird, it can exist in the form of a human, it can exist in multiple forms. Okay, that's the ability to transform into multiple figures. Then flight, ability to fly. So have you seen that Harry Potter? So Hermione, so they had a broom which they used to actually fly. Okay, so that is witches. They will actually be, there is a deep story related to it. Okay, why these brooms are only considered to be the object of flight for the witches. There is a story related to medieval Europe and the beer factory. Okay, we'll discuss about it. So that is the flight. Then the witches will have what is called as the familiar. Familiar means a pet. Usually cats, feline animals will be seen as the pet of the witches. Usually cats, they are shown to be the ones having black cats with very sharp canine teeth, isn't it? Okay, so then they have a sabbat. Sabbat simply means that a gathering, that in which the witches will come together, they will plan, okay, ki what has to be done. So that is regular sabbats will be happening. Okay, then they are associated with spread of disease. Then they are associated with abduction of children. Also, they are associated with illicit sexual relations. So to an extent that certain witches in certain societies, they might be associated with respect to necrophilia or bestiality or pedophilia. Necrophilia simply means having sex with dead bodies. Bestiality means having sex with animals, and pedophilia means having sex with children. Okay, so illicit sexual relationship, that will be witches will be accused for that. Okay, then they might participate into some kind of ritual murders, killing the victims, and they are associated with death, cannibalism, vampirism, something like this. The practices will be associated with witches. Now, a scholar, Mary Douglas, she says that usually the attributes that we attach to the witch, they are the products of evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychology simply means that these are the most dreaded nightmares of the humans during our journey to evolve as modern humans. हमारी जो past journey है, what did we feared most? These are the attributes that we attach to witches. That there was no light, or say evening light or street lights were not there. So we had the fear of darkness. So what we did, we basically attributed, say that there are witches in the dark. Okay, we had the fear of abduction of the children. We loved our children, so we actually created that there are witches which are moving in the dark and they abduct the children. So they have this habit of abducting the children, and that's why we created an ideal that, or say an image that is shown to kidnap the children, to kill the children. Then we wanted social stability. As soon as we shifted towards agriculture, we wanted a social stability. And for that social stability, what is actually required is some kind of sexual morality. Now we created a figure who would actually violate those sexual morality, so that anybody should not actually follow that particular norms. So we had a figure which actually engages in illicit sexual relationship, and that is the most hated figure. Okay, so that is how our evolutionary experiences, actually the things that we fear the most, we started to associate with certain kind of symbols, that is the witch or witchcraft. हमने उनके साथ associate करना शुरू किया. Now in the modern society, if you see these behaviors, suppose if you are living in an apartment, there are multiple houses who are connected to each other, and a new tenant in that apartment comes, who is a single mother or a single woman, doesn't dresses as if as per the norms of the people in that particular society. So she is good looking, doesn't dresses as per the norms of that city or as per the norms of that particular society. How do the societal women look at her? So usually the term that Hindi में witch को क्या कहते हैं, they will be calling her that particular term. Okay, so here what are the attributes that are associated with this? Antisocial behavior. Okay, that actually she is trying to disrupt the society, or say trying to bring some kind of disruption, fission in the society. Okay, nocturnal, maybe she might be going for late night parties, nocturnal behaviors. Okay, so if you see that all these features some way or the other, directly or indirectly indicate any particular person who might not be following the norms of the society. and that particular person might be labeled as a witch. Okay, so this is the attributes. Now some other explanations for this witchcraft or belief in witchcraft. One is cognitive interpretation. What is that cognitive interpretation? It basically says that any kind of misfortune that happens in the society is social in nature. It cannot happen without a cause. And for if there is any misfortune that has happened and it is unexpected misfortune, there is a tendency in the human mind to find the cause for it. Okay, so there's a scholar named Monica Wilson. She gives a statement saying that human mind is designed in a manner that we cannot accept coincidence to be a cause for an event. In our cosmology, coincidence never exists. There is every phenomena, every effect has a cause for sure. तो कुछ हुआ है तो कोई ना कोई तो reason होगा. But in certain cases, when you are not able to find the cause, in such cases, witchcraft acquisition acts as a hyperactive agency detection mechanism. You basically identify somebody who might be accused, who might be labeled as a witch and as a person who is the cause for that particular phenomena to happen. So you identify an agency, a body responsible for this misfortune to happen to you, or who would want this misfortune to happen to you. That is what is called as a cognitive interpretation. Or it's nothing but a scapegoat mechanism. Okay, kuch hua hai, you want to blame it on somebody. Witchcraft is the scapegoat mechanism. Now, the modern form of this cognitive interpretation. So, if you remember, when 2014 BJP government came to power, so Suresh Prabhu was the first railway minister that time. Okay, very efficient person, very intelligent. But unfortunately, what actually happened that as soon as BJP government took the power, बहुत सारे railway accidents होने लगे, one after the other, big railway accidents that started to happen. Now, one major accident that happened was of a train somewhere near Kanpur. And you know what actually happened there? That instead of NDRF, that is Disaster Response Force or SDRF, who came first to that particular spot? NIA, National Investigation Agency. And what they did, they blamed this railway accident on ISI. बोल के कि ISI is responsible, it is causing some failure in the system due to which signaling is problematic and due to which accidents are happening. Because they were not able to find the cause who is responsible for this, and that's why they actually blamed it on a particular assumed agency कि भाई इसने ये कराया होगा. बाद में इन्वेस्टिगेशन हुई, साल डेढ़ साल बाद रिपोर्ट भी आ गई that no involvement of ISI was there, it was something related to some mechanical issues only, that accident happened. But eventually, for the time being, it acted as a scapegoat mechanism. Or in the present time, that suppose if there is an instability, or say there is a movement against the government that is happening, or say sentiments against the government that is there. So in that case, they will create some kind of agency that can be blamed. They don't know how it exists or how it works, but that agency can be blamed. Urban Naxals, communist, remember McCarthyism? So this is the modern form of witchcraft acquisition that happens. So whenever anything is happening, any misfortune is happening, and you don't know a particular cause responsible for it, blame it on somebody. Label it, you don't know whether they exist or not, how do they work, what is the modus operandi or not, but just create an agency and blame it on them. That is the scapegoat mechanism, and witchcraft is also like a scapegoat mechanism to explain any misfortune that will happen in the society. So it exists in those societies where coincidence do not have any place in their logic. कुछ भी हुआ है, so they need to find the cause. When they cannot, they will blame it to somebody whom they feel is the one who would want harm to us. Okay, that is the cognitive interpretation of witchcraft acquisition. Okay. Next one is the sociological understanding of witchcraft. Why do this witch and witchcraft belief actually exist? So this is saying that it is to maintain the norms of the society. So structure functions will explain that the witchcraft belief system actually maintains stability in the social structure. It actually maintains the norms in the society. Why? Basically, every society has some kind of ideal behaviors, and witchcraft, they are antithesis of those ideal behavior. They represent a figure that is to be hated. And by creating such kind of figure that will be hated by the society is made aware that these are the behaviors that you should not follow. Because if you follow that behavior, you will become one of the hated figure of the society. So that's how society is made aware about the norms. And if you are following that norms, you become the respected member of the society. If you violate that norms, you go against those norms, you will be labeled as a witch. So by creating this hated figure, that is the antithesis of the ideal norms, society and the social norms are reinforced. Okay. So a scholar who is a structural functionist only, Clyde Cluckhorn, he studied a tribe of North America named Navajos. Now when he studied Navajos, he found that in this society, egalitarianism is the norm. That they believe that everybody is equal. Now, in such cases, what actually he found that since egalitarianism is a norm, whenever there is a harvest, and if any person finds that he has harvested extra, आज उसकी yield ज़्यादा है, so he might actually discard that surplus, will not keep it with him. Why? Because that having that surplus might actually make him get labeled as a witch, as he's challenging the egalitarian norms of the society. He's trying to accumulate the surplus, he's trying to create a hierarchy in the society, and that's why he will always discard that surplus. And due to which, this witchcraft acquisition, he found that acts as a leveling mechanism. Leveling mechanism means कि सबको एक level पे ले आएगा. Anybody who will be having that surplus will discard it, because having that surplus might get him labeled as a witch. He might have used some kind of magical acts to steal the fertility from somebody's soil, and due to which he has the extra yield. तो वो इस वजह से कभी extra रखेगा ही नहीं, because he never wanted to be labeled as a witch. And due to which you can understand that this egalitarian society is maintained, okay, and it is acting as a leveling mechanism. Moreover, it maintains social solidarity, social cohesion, peace in the society. So one way is that people believe in witchcraft, but they don't know who actually is the witch, who actually has that power. So that's why they will never engage in any kind of confrontation with anyone, thinking that that particular person might be a witch, might cast a spell on me, might actually do something harm to me, and due to which let's not engage into it. आज के टाइम पे भी ऐसा होता है. Your parents ask you not to go in any kind of verbal spat with anyone. Why? Basically, they also have a belief in the power of words. So they also tell you that क्या पता कौन कुछ बोले और सही हो जाए. And that's why they ask you not to go into any kind of verbal spat with everyone. Okay, don't argue with anyone, because they might say something and that might come out to be true for you, and that's why it's better to avoid this. So by belief in this kind of things, what eventually is happening, the larger aspect, that you don't engage into any kind of arguments, you don't fall into any kind of conflict or confrontation with anyone, okay, because you believe in witchcraft, but you don't know who exactly is a witch, who has that power, who can cause harm to you, and that's why you stay away from all the kinds of conflict, maintaining a larger peace in the society. Getting this point? So it is having a structure functions, according to structure functions point of view, a mechanism to stabilize the existing social structure. Moreover, it also reinforces power hierarchy in the society. that somebody who is powerful, whenever his power or their power is getting challenged in the society, they might accuse the marginal sections to be practicing witchcraft. And by doing so, the existing social structure might be justified. Because the marginal section might be labeled as witches, and that might bring a collective hatred against them, collective punishment against them. They will never try to challenge the ones who are in power. Okay, and that's how the power hierarchy is maintained. Getting this point? So this is the sociological interpretation of the existence of witchcraft in the society, maintenance of stable social structure. Okay, अब इसका हमारी लाइफ में कैसे आप पावर हायरार्की को देखते हो? सो सी यूजुअली इन डे टू डे लाइफ आपने अगर एकता कपूर के सीरीज देखी होंगी, so you find that कि mother was a dominant figure in the house till the time her son got married, and then comes another woman who starts to challenge the authority of the mother-in-law, okay, in day-to-day activities, and eventually this creates a kind of friction. In order to maintain that power hierarchy, witchcraft acquisition might start in the house itself, okay, wherein the mother-in-law might label the daughter-in-law as practicing some kind of black magic. इसने मेरे बेटे पे क्या काला जादू कर रखा है. You must have heard this kind. So this is the belief system. You can understand this, and that is being reflected in day-to-day interactions of the people as well. Okay. So this is the explanation of witchcraft acquisitions. Just write this: witchcraft. So somebody is writing why anthropology justifies every evil behavior, however bad it is. Okay, let me tell you another way. It's like anthropology is not justifying it. Anthropology is giving you a reason why it exists. It's like understanding any cultural phenomena as if it is not for granted. You go behind it, just try to see why it actually originated, what function it is doing. So rather than justifying it, it's just giving you a reason that ये phenomena आया क्यों बनाया गया, लोगों को ऐसी क्या जरूरत थी. Okay, and that is what it's trying to explain rather than justifying it. It's not saying that कि आपको witchcraft acquisition practice करना चाहिए या ये सही है. It's just trying to explain you through that cultural lens. Why are only females termed as witches and shamans are males? No, it's not like that. Witches can be both male and female. There is no, usually बाद में उसको determine करने लगे कि witches को usually female बोलने लगे, but that's not the case. Shaman or sorcerers में why they are male, there is a reason for it. Reason is simple societies में women were the ones who were considered to be important, sacred, because they have the power of genesis. The group can continue only if the women reproduce. Okay, and doing these kind of activities like doing magical activities, communicating with the spirit, might make the women in the reproductive age lose their power to become reproductive, or say it might actually cause some kind of harm to the children, means consumption of psychotropic drugs, or say doing extreme fasting, extreme form of dance actually might cause harm to the genitalia or the reproductive power of the woman. And that's why it is believed that it might be because of these reasons. It's usually the male who risks their life to engage into such kind of activities, whereas any woman who might be in the reproductive age will never participate into these activities, as it might harm the reproductive capacity and it's harmful for the group in turn. Okay, so it's all related to the power of genesis that is there with the woman, and that's why they don't do this. That's right, witch and witchcraft. Witchcraft is an innate power. Witchcraft is an innate power that develops within some adults. That develops within some adults and operates mystically. And operates mystically, and sometimes without its bearer's knowledge. Sometimes without its bearer knowledge. The power is internal and inherited. The power is internal and inherited. And evil is done by thoughts. And evil is done by thoughts. कल्चर में कैरेक्टराइज which is in different ways. The major characteristics or attributes are, you can just make a reference from here, the 11 characteristics that I dictated. Okay, कौन सा? ये वाला, pedophilia. Next point, right? Explanation of witchcraft. First one, evolutionary psychology. According to Mary Douglas, beliefs and behaviors related to witchcraft might have been shaped by evolutionary experiences of mankind. Witchcraft reflects standardized nightmare of a group. And attributes of witches reflects deepest human fears. Attributes of witches reflects deepest human fears of darkness, abduction of children, and violation of sexuality norms. Second, cognitive interpretation. Witchcraft explains misfortunes in the society. According to Monica Wilson, witchcraft provides a handy and logical explanation for social misfortunes in cosmological systems in which coincidence has no place. In which coincidence has no place. It serves as a scapegoat mechanism. It serves as a scapegoat mechanism. When things go poor. When things go poor. It provides people avenues to do something. Avenues to do something. Hyphen. Identify, accuse or punish. Identify, accuse or punish. Okay. Next point. Sociological interpretation. Sociological interpretation. Witchcraft is seen as social institution that reflects and reinforces social control and moral order within a community. Reflects, reinforce social control and moral order within a community. Next point. Every culture has a notion. Every culture has a notion about how an individual should behave. Every culture has a notion about how an individual should behave. Witches are antithesis of these cultural ideals. Witches are antithesis of these cultural ideals. They symbolize all that is undesirable. They symbolize all that is undesirable and hateful. Next point. By creating a hated symbol, society strengthens and reinforces the approved social behavior. Next point, last point. It is also a means to assert power by the dominant section. It's through witchcraft acquisition. Any kind of dissent, this dissent or revolt is silenced. Any kind of dissent, it's through witchcraft acquisition. Any kind of dissent is silenced. Okay, so these are some of the interpretations of witchcraft. There is another topic that is related to witchcraft. It's a statement that is given by Ivan Spichard. Witchcraft acquisition is a result of strained interpersonal relationship. Okay, so which direction witchcraft acquisition goes basically reflects the tension in the society. who जिसके साथ सबसे ज्यादा tension, that particular group, that particular individual might be labeled as a witch in that society. Okay, so that is the idea of this statement. For this, I just want you to see a small clip.
Are dusting off their brooms. Halloween is quickly approaching, and many aspiring witches and warlocks are dusting off their brooms and pointy hats. But many of them would be surprised to learn the link between a typical witch costume and medieval beer production. Hey, this is Ryan from Beer by the Numbers, and today we're going to discover the hidden link between witches and beer. This image of a broom-wielding sorceress with a tall hat, a black cat, and a bubbling cauldron overflowing with potions has been synonymous with witches for the last century and probably even longer. The truth of the woman in this story takes us down a much different path altogether, though. A path not about magic and mystery, but about money and politics. So if you've watched some of our beer history videos, you'll know that for thousands of years, beer brewing was a domestic task done primarily in the home by women. Alewives were women who opened their homes to sell the beer they made, and they also ran the rural taverns all across Europe in the medieval period. Now, if you take a look at the stereotypical garb of a witch, a cat, a pointed hat, a broom, and a bubbling cauldron, all of those are pieces of equipment that would have been essential for alewives. The bubbling cauldron is probably the easiest connection to make. After all, any brewer needs a huge bubbling vat to boil their wort as they make sweet, delicious beer. Next, let's look at those pointy witches' hats. Back in the height of women's fashion, the hat of choice for a lady who wanted to stand out was a hennin. Hennins were conical hats that were often ornately decorated, and they stood up to 2 feet tall. These hats were insanely popular with the ladies in the royal courts of medieval Europe. Now, there weren't many ladies of the court out and about in the taverns, but alewives adopted these tall hats so they could stand out on crowded streets and in their own crowded taverns. Historians believe this was a pretty simple marketing scheme. It was much easier to sell more beer if people could easily identify you in a crowd. After all, any good business wants to make it as easy as possible to order the next round of beers. In another effort to promote sales, alewives would often place a broom, a symbol of domestic trade, in front of their home or their tavern. Even in modern-day Peru, a stick adorned with a red bouquet or bag is a symbol placed outside the doorway to indicate that their ale is ready for consumption. Another symbol found outside the door was a talisman resembling a Star of David. The star was used to convey the purity of the beer. Remember, it was the Middle Ages. Plagues and other diseases were a constant concern. The 6 points on the star are said to symbolize the most important parts of brewing: hops, grain, malt, yeast, water, and of course, the brewer. As for black cats as sidekicks, women of the time were heavily reliant on felines to protect their grain stores and their homes from vermin. In fact, most rural households relied on cats to keep the mice and rats at bay, but it was of particular importance for alewives who had large stores of grain on hand for brewing. For many centuries, women enjoyed the success and gained much respect as key drivers of the beer industry. But the winds of political change were brewing, and alewives became the target of pressure from religious officials. Now, we have to remember that at this time in history, politics and religion were really one and the same. Kings and queens received their right to rule not by a vote of the people, but by a divine right from God. Therefore, as interpreters of God's will, the church held a great amount of power, and the opinions of the clergy held great sway within medieval society. The great influence of the church eventually corrupted into a rather great lust for power, and they sought to control, or at least the ability to greatly influence, all positions of power within European society. At a time when large, bureaucratic, male-dominated trade guilds were the norm, a large, decentralized, and woman-dominated industry was pretty much the opposite of what the church wanted. So what was the church gonna do? Traditionally, the church taught that witches were worshippers of the old and false pagan gods. Witches were said to be mischievous and not to be trusted, but they weren't inherently evil. It was more like witches would lead you down a path of false hope and away from the true God and Savior Jesus. However, in order to more effectively reduce the influence of alewives, the church began depicting witches as slaves of the devil. Witches were here on earth to do the devil's bidding and were actively working against the will of God. And how did witches spread evil throughout the world? Why, by brewing potions and getting unsuspecting people to drink them, of course. I think you can see where this is going. Alewives were being associated with devil-worshipping bringers of evil in the world. As a result, many alewives were forced to close shop, and even more disturbing, some of them were accused of witchcraft proper. It was a pretty dark time for the church. Many women were tried for witchcraft, and almost all of them who were found guilty were executed once accused. The sentence was typically death, especially during the particularly brutal crackdowns like the Spanish Inquisition. Now, that's not to say all churches across all of Europe were executing women who brewed beer, but over several generations and hundreds of years, many different groups of men managed to use religious authority in one way or another to get women to close up shop. Then larger, centralized, and male-dominated breweries popped up in society to fill the void. This didn't happen just to brewing. It happened across many, many industries throughout the Middle Ages. Breweries popped up.
So this is the idea. You can understand that witchcraft acquisition was used as a political and religious tool in order to take away the control of beer industry from the women. And the typical image of witch that we see right now is the image of the woman who used to brew the beers. So the hat, the cat, the broom and all, everything is related to this beer industry which the women were actually controlling, and this eventually became the typical image of a witch. Okay, so we'll talk about this topic in the next class. That's it for today. Thank you so much.